Hi. It's been a while since we spoke. I have done my best to arrange my setup in a way that it will work perfectly, but this is all being held together by like hot glue. I have like 3 machines running at the same time, which probably explains where I've been. I disappeared for a year, partially because the laptop that I was using for editing and recording unfortunately passed away. I've just been overly stressed for the last year, but that's not different to anyone who has struggled in the last 2 years, so it's not really saying much. I don't really know how much of it I want to go into. My experience has not been novel, my experience has not been, highlightable. I don't think that it's worth all too much sharing, because I think that we as a globe, as well as a nation in the UK, have, especially those of us who are working class or are frontline workers, have struggled a fair amount in the pandemic. So, all that said, hi, I'm back. I've been saying for a while that I would be back, and I feel as though I have led some of you on, because the first time I did say that I would be back was in like November. I just couldn't find the motivation to sit down and record. Like I had all the materials, I have a new laptop. It's not perfect for video editing, but I've onboarded an editor, and I think you guys will really enjoy the content, because I've seen some of the stuff he's edited for me, and I'm very happy with the work that he has provided. And might I also add that it certainly will not hurt for me to have a second pair of eyes on my inane ranting. All that said, I should warn you that I am coming back swinging. I think that the last year has offered me a lot of time to sort of consider all of the things that happened the year before. And for those of you who have kept up with the channel, and for those of you who are new, hi, I'm Faye. I used to do a lot of ex-Muslim content, and the last few videos that I posted within the last 4 or 5, I expressed that I no longer wanted to post ex-Muslim content. I no longer wanted to endorse that community, because I found that the community that I was in was incredibly flawed, especially in the figureheads that sort of, I don't want to say lead, but basically lead the flow of conversation in that community. There was a lot of bigotry, there was a lot of safeguarding malpractice, and there was just a lot of shitty behavior, I think is the word I'm looking for. I don't think that it's easy for me to explain exactly how difficult it is to go against my tribe twice. I was radicalized as a young person. I was radicalized into and indoctrinated into a very, very conservative, bordering on violent version of Islam. That was my upbringing, and that is what I have left. It has been a very incredibly difficult journey for me. My family disowned me, I live by myself, I'm a young person. All of that is documented on my channel. And one of the things that I started doing after I left Islam was invest all my time and energy into this ex-Muslim community. I did it for over a year. And I left my reviews and walked out the door. And that's not to say that I didn't have a good time at all. Like, I don't entirely regret the experience. I think it taught me a lot of things about myself and the boundaries that I should keep, and also the kinds of people that I don't really want to engage with. A lot of people, when they watched my content, especially as I started shifting from what was the common sort of ideas that these ex-Muslim figureheads had, I think a lot of the people who saw me do that kind of went, well, why are you so adamant on being a contrarian? I don't think that I was trying necessarily to start trouble or drum up drama. I always feel as though I come into something with good intentions, and then I don't always present myself in the best light. I get overly emotional about certain things. I know the reason for that. The reason for that is that my day job is working with kids. Like, I work with young people, I work with kids. Most of the time they are disadvantaged in some way. They're disabled, or they come from care, or they have a learning disability, or they have mental health problems, and that is my day job. And anytime I see malpractice, I kind of shift my perspective to like, oh, it's as if these people are hurting my kids. I don't put up with that at work, and I certainly don't want to put up with it anywhere. I have very little patience for people who do terrible things, and I don't think that they should be guarded. And I also don't understand how anyone, whether they like me, dislike me, agree with me, disagree with me, I don't know how anyone can expect me to think well of people who have abused me, abused the people I love, and abused the people around them. The whole experience of like getting into it, and I was so eagerly welcomed into this community. It was almost as if they wanted to sell me this idea that if I joined them, then I would be part of a completely new family, and I could completely forget everything that I went through previously with my actual family. But then when it came time to disagree, they treated me almost exactly how my biological family treated me when it was time to disagree, and ultimately when it was time to leave. Being abandoned twice by my support system was not easy. I'm doing okay now. I have a support system. I've always had a support system outside that, you know, I'm a survivor. I've got contingency plans. I've always got contingency plans. And I kind of just wanted to sit down and review what I never thought I was capable of, which was being an angry atheist. I had this really arrogant notion in my head that I never had an angry atheist phase, but it's very clear from a lot of my content that I have had an angry atheist phase. It was a very intense and measured anger in some sense, because I have spent the last few days going through my content, and I still think that a lot of my content is good, but I can see how it can be used by people who have poor intentions. A lot of my content are just opinion pieces. Like I love religion. I'm a humanities student. I'm a psychology student. You know, I'm currently doing a psychology degree. But at my heart, I'm a humanities student. I studied English literature. I studied religion. I studied history. To my core, I am a critical analyst of humanities. I have a lot of opinions about the religion that I came from, and I feel like I'm entitled to those opinions because I came from that religion. But I can also see how like some of my content, because it is very difficult content to talk about, that it can be used to target minority communities and mistreat them. So I have unlisted a lot of my videos until I can properly edit them down, or like maybe even redo them so that they are better presented. Can I just say that, for starters, I have never called myself an atheist. I might have used the term to sort of as a shortcut to explain that I'm not religious, but generally speaking, if someone asks me what I believe, I tend to say that I'm non-religious. Technically, from a philosophical standpoint, I am what is known as an atheist, which is someone who does not care if a God exists. And that is my standpoint on God. First of all, the God conversation is what dominates religious discourse. Every single time you go to talk to someone about religion online, it's always this discussion of, well, God exists, so therefore morality. And then like, it's like, if you're an atheist, you don't have morality. And those are the conversations that constantly go on. And it's such a dead end of conversation. It's almost like debating determinism and free will. Like, you will never find the answer. You will never find the answer. Stop talking about it. You will never know if God exists. Stop fucking talking about it. People have been talking about it since the dawn of humanity. You think you're gonna add and contribute something new? It's unknowable information. Can we stop, please? Jesus Christ, get some help. I don't care if a God exists, because if a God exists, why should I worship him? What is the benefit of worshipping him? Just because he made me is not a good enough reason to worship someone. My parents made me, but my father was not a good parent. So why should I respect my father for simply making me? That doesn't make any sense to me. If you idolize an entity, there should be a good reason beyond they made me to worship them, at least in my opinion. And that's the opinion that I've always held. I don't care if there is a God. I hate the concept of someone demanding that I worship them simply because they created me. It's just ludicrous as an idea to me. Now, with all of that said, I do not care what you believe. Like, I don't care. Religion is so multifaceted and so interpretable that I don't care what you believe. Like, if someone tells me that they're a Muslim, for example, it doesn't tell me a lot about the kind of Muslim that they are, and it doesn't matter, because a person's religion shouldn't be an immediate sort of indicator for how you should feel about them. If someone telling you that they are of a certain religion and you judge them immediately for it, guess what? You're a bigot. The atheist community online has been running with this narrative that, like, every single time I see these arguments between atheists and religious people, it's always kind of the same sort of non-progressive argumentation. Like, it's always like, oh, you're religious, you're an idiot. Oh, you're an atheist, you don't have any morals. Are we still here? Why are we having the 14-year-olds writing up the debates for us? We're adults. We can have an adult conversation. And my particular problem, especially when I was in the ex-Muslim community, was the standard of people being anti-theistic. And I find it incredibly problematic to be anti-theistic, because I don't really know what that means in terms of action. If you identify yourself as someone who is an anti-theist, who is someone who is completely against religion and thinks that religion shouldn't exist and wants a world without religion, first of all, incredibly unrealistic. I think that there is something in all of us, in every single human being, that gives us dread, and reaching out to religion for comfort from that dread is okay. We're all some level of hopeful that there is something more than simply this life. I'm under no illusion, really, that there's only this life. I have a very nihilistic perspective of the world, and it really helps me on my day-to-day to just be the best that I can and do the best that I can, because I think that that's the only way to live. Like, to give your life meaning, you have to live with meaning. And people find meaning in religion. People find comfort in the idea of dying and being able to carry on somewhere else. And I think that there's nothing inherently wrong with believing that, if it lets you get on with your day-to-day. Sorry, I'm fixing my hair. It's so short-sighted of people to simply say, religion is bad, it shouldn't exist, terrible thing, don't care, you shouldn't have it, no one should have it. People are incredibly complex. Religion is incredibly complex. And then, like, a person's individual perspective of how they practice their religion and the thing that they gain from it is incredibly complex. You can't just boil it down to religion is bad. Yes, religion has been used to influence culture in maybe a negative way. Religion has been used to promote a political agenda, but that does not mean that on an individual level that religion is bad for each and every person. A frequent example that I use when talking about my dislike, let's just say that, of antitheism is my own mother. My mother died of cancer when I was 17. I don't want to get into the sob story of it, but my mother found great comfort in religion in her last days. That was important to her, and it was important to me to reflect on as someone who then, after she died, left religion. She found comfort in the idea that she would see her dad again, who had passed away a few years before her. She had comfort in the idea that God was just going to take care of her. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with people having that belief? I think that when you question a lot of the people who do say rather insensitive or even bigoted things about religious people or to religious people, especially those people who just constantly inflame religious communities on Twitter, guys, the response to this is always like, oh, I always say don't be a bigot. Well, it doesn't really matter if you constantly tell people not to be a bigot. If you yourself are a bigot, you're just throwing the scent of what you are. If you want to have a serious discussion about religion, you need to be A, informed, and B, be able to have a mature conversation. I'm not going to act like every single religious, pundit who's arguing on Twitter is a 14-year-old. They're obviously not. Some of them are grown, adults. One of the more annoying parts of religion discourse is inflammation. Constant shit posting about religion. If your whole Twitter feed is just religion shit posting, I'm sorry, you have a problem. If there's not even like an interruption of like other kinds of politics, animals, just some feel-good content, you might have a fucking problem. The reason I say that is because I had a problem. My entire feed was just religion shitposting. The original Twitter handle that I had, so the one that I have now is my second one. The first one that I had got permanently suspended, and I'm kind of glad that it did, because I engaged in that inflammatory behavior. At the time, like, a lot of my YouTube personality was, oh, I get banned on Twitter and it's so fun, aren't I funny? It's not funny. Like, it just isn't funny. It doesn't encourage discourse, it just encourages conflict. Conflict is the bane of progression. Conflict is the bane of progression, and that is what inflammation does. Yes, there are instances where inflammation can be used to raise awareness about a situation, but when it's all that you do, like, it's everything that you do, it's your entire personality online, where are you going with it exactly? I find it problematic, and I find it bigoted when that's all that you do. And I've made the argument before, and I understand the argument that, like, blasphemy, for example, is still something that's punishable in, Muslim majority countries, and it shouldn't be, because free speech should be allowed everywhere. If you're not prefacing that that's what you're doing, then all you're doing is inviting hatred and also inciting hatred, because you've not fully explained what the hell you're doing. Like, it's not an organized protest, it's just screaming into the void and then being surprised when the void screams back at you. That's one of my biggest gripes with inflammatory content. Like, I used to make inflammatory content on Twitter and on YouTube, and a lot of that is not on the table anymore. I don't want to make inflammatory content because I don't think it's helpful. At my core and professionally, I'm an educator, and the point of education is not to push people away, but to bring people in, no matter what their background is, and make sure that they are given the facts, and to leave it on the table for them to take when they're ready. Like, that is the complete point of education. When I was making this inflammatory content, I was never surprised that people reacted back in a negative way. Like, if you put hateful shit on the internet, you're gonna get hateful shit back. Constantly inciting hatred and then acting a victim when hatred is tossed back at you is just so silly. It's so silly. Most of us have grown up with technology. We know how it works. You're just hate baiting people. And it's so not, like, it doesn't go anywhere. And that, like, leads into what I wanted to talk about as well, is, like, debate culture. I enjoy a good debate where you have 2 or 3 parties who are talking about a topic, and there's an objective party that's moderating them, and they have, like, segmented times that they can talk, segmented times that they can rebuttal, and maybe like a question and answer at the end. I enjoy a good, professionally held debate. When these people in religious discourse online talk about debating, they're not talking about a traditional debate. What they're talking about is a pissing contest. It's so disappointing. I've seen atheist creators have debates before with, like, religious leaders and things like that, and I appreciate those debates because they are eye-opening, but a lot of those formally set up debates now have also devolved into these, like, pissing contest-esque debate types. When you watch a debate, the point of it is to be given information from all sides, and then for the audience to choose from, like, the information that's given to them what they think they will believe or take away from the debate. They'll pick a topic like abortion or something like that, and then they'll talk about that, and then like the audience can stand to choose, because you have like an objective portrayal of both sides, of like two knowledgeable people who have talked about the same topic from different angles, right? But like this kind of debate culture doesn't allow for that sort of free choice, because it just becomes a place of confirmation bias for whoever side you're picking, because you're no longer going there to learn something, you're just going there to support your guy. That's not how a debate is meant to be conducted. That is not how a debate is meant to go. That is not what the outcome of a debate is meant to be. If you're going to debate, for example, about Islam, you need to have a base level understanding of what Islam is. For example, if I was to debate someone, which I never will, I don't enjoy debate culture, and like a lot of even formal set up debates have devolved into this debate toxic culture. But like if I were to debate Islam, the only Islam that I could debate about would be the Islam that I was radicalized into, which is a Salafi or Wahhabi interpretation of Islam. If you haven't got that lived experience and you don't have the knowledge, you shouldn't be debating about it, because you will be very easily dismantled and you will hurt your own cause. I've seen, for example, atheist creators who haven't had a Muslim background, don't have a good knowledge of Islam, debate Muslim preachers, and they come off not as well because they don't have all the information they need to fully debate this topic. Am I making sense? I feel like I'm making sense, right? The majority Islam is like Sunni Islam, which is like 80% of Muslims are Sunnis. If you're going to debate about Islam, you need to take into consideration that Sunni Islam is probably what you're going to be talking about, at least. Why are you like, there are so many different ways that you can express your religious background and like the things that you have gone through, and there are so many topics that you can talk about. Every single human being's experience in their life is so rich and so like complex that there are things that you can talk about, like 100% you can talk about. Why would you choose to debate about a topic that you know so little about, and then like you're surprised when people have a problem with you, when people use your words for their ill intentions? Why are you surprised? You brought ignorance to the table, whether knowingly or unknowingly. It's not really an excuse. If you're a public figurehead, you have access to the internet, you have access to resources, you have access to people, you have the ability to strengthen your knowledge about a topic before talking about it. For example, the number of wives that Muhammad had, or like Muhammad's life story. Those are things that you should know before you go into a discussion about Muhammad. I feel like. No? Does this make sense? If you are just going and blindly attacking people without any knowledge and just spouting things that aren't true, you are spreading ignorance and you are spreading bigotry, and you are a bigot for doing that, because you have made assumptions about a religion without checking them, and then you have gone on to spread them. The last and final thing that I kind of want to talk on about like my own angry atheist experience is like, especially like halfway through my journey into this like ex-Muslim community, I was constantly talking about reaching out to the other side and building a bridge to the other side, to be able to get to the point where ex-Muslims and Muslims can talk, religious and non-religious people can talk and understand that they are part of the same community. The ex-Muslim community is still a part of the Muslim community because that was their lived experience. You lived and, shared all these Islamic experiences with Muslim people. You can't separate that from yourself. A lot of people definitely try, and I can understand wanting to do that because, especially if your experience was particularly bad, I can understand why you kind of want to separate from it. Like, for example, I was Muslim for 20 years, like I can't just erase that from my history. That's always going to be part of my history. And this is something that I've shared before, that like Muslims and ex-Muslims understand my experience, whereas like anyone outside of that purview, I would have to preface, you know, and explain a lot of my terms. I would have to explain a lot of my experiences. I would have to explain a lot of my culture. But like Muslims and ex-Muslims understand them immediately, which gives us a sense of community. Needing to progress and talk to the other side has always been important to me, and it was something that I was prolifically promoting and telling people within this figurehead group that we need to do. But every time I tried, it was always shot down very quickly. And there's one memory in my brain that I will never forget. We were in Speaker's Corner, and you know, I don't typically do well in like personal conflict situations, but when it comes to like setting and talking to strangers and things like that, I can kind of compartmentalize and understand that even if this is quite an aggressive conversation, I understand that this is like a stranger, and they're not trying to be mean to me, they're just trying to express their own frustration about whatever they're, you know, whatever they're feeling. I was engaging in a lot of argumentation, I was engaging in a lot of conversation, and a lot of the conversation that I was engaging in was also allowing me to understand things that I hadn't really considered before about myself, which I found incredibly, you know, liberating and incredibly helpful. There was this one person in the group when we were at Speaker's Corner that was constantly pulling me away from different conversations, just constantly pulling me away. And I told them repeatedly, can you stop doing that? It is so rude when I am talking to someone that you pull me away and not even let me say goodbye. It is so rude. It is so discourteous of you to do that. Their response each and every time was, they're never going to change. You're not going to convince them to change. And there's no point of argumentation. And it's like, why are you even a part of a movement then? If you truly believe that, then why are you a part of this movement? Why are you a part of, you know, this movement that's seeking to change unless you are trying to spread a certain type of narrative? What do you mean they will never change? What do you mean they will never listen? Who's they? Because as far as I was concerned, I was talking to people who understood what I was talking about. Yes, we had different opinions, but we were still talking. And it was a good time. It was a wonderful time. It was a very heated time, I will admit. It was still an eye-opening and good time. They will never change and they will never listen. That is a sentiment that I have heard repeatedly. It clicked in my head that, oh, I don't think you have good intentions. I think that maybe your intentions are skewed to a certain narrative. It's really, really disgraceful, because then these people will stand up and be like, we're not for bigotry, we're not for racism, we're not for anti-Muslim bigotry. It's sad, it's gross. When you invite people from all facets of life into your life, they enrich it. The only time that people take things away from you from on an emotional or like a human level is when they are negatively affecting you, which a lot of the people and figureheads in this community did. I feel as though I came from a very vulnerable place as a vulnerable person, and then they used my vulnerable experience to spread and smear their own narrative all over it, and then abandoned me once I was no longer within line of them, which almost makes them come across as a cult. I feel as though I've spoken everything I can about this. I don't want to talk about religion ever again, because as I said, it was such a big part of my life. Coming out of it and then also coming out of this, I feel like I have a more balanced approach in how I want to talk about religion. I don't necessarily know what kind of content I want to engage in, because as I said, religion discourse is so saturated with like, does God exist? Are atheists moral? And it's just like, oh my god, we've beaten these guys to death, guys. Can we stop? Can we stop and move on? Can we talk about something interesting? Can we talk about ghosts? That's what I want to talk about. Can we talk about like the end times? Like, let's talk about the end times. I'm down for that conversation. Let's talk about Prophet Moses, like from all three canons. Let's compare. Because like, I love that guy. His stories are the best, like biblically, like from Judeo-Christian scriptures as well as from Quranic like, let's sit down and let's compare. Like, that sounds like such a fun conversation to me. That's what I always wanted to do. I never wanted to come into this like making fucking enemies, but like I have. Let me tell you something personal about me. I will tell you this because I feel like it needs to be said not just to you, my audience, and it's something that I want to share, but also because there's a certain type of person that I don't want in my life anymore. When someone says something bad to me, and I mean like objectively bad, like they abuse me, or they abuse someone I know, or they abuse the people around them, the things that they say, particularly what they say, not necessarily what they do, but what they say, whether it's in written form or it's like in auditory form, those things stick in my brain very, very vividly. I remember things that like my grandma, my dad, my aunt said to me years and years and years ago, as if they said it to me like just now, 5 minutes ago. Those are the things that stick with me. It's just how my brain is wired. I have a very negative brain. I know that. Thank you. I've read your emails. Those are the things that stick with me, really and truly. If you're a bad person, I'm just gonna put out a public service announcement. Do not become friends with me. Just don't do it. I'm a patient person. I'm not a forgiving person, but I'm a patient person. Even if when I meet you, you aren't a particularly good person, I'm not gonna give up on you immediately, because I have hope that you will be better, and I will express that you should be better, and I will expect you to be better. I know that I shouldn't have expectations of people, but when you're my friend, I feel like I can have an expectation of you. If you're a bad person, do not become my friend, because every single bad thing you say to me will sit in my brain, and I will remember it forever. When it comes time for me to finally give up on you, you are not safe from me telling everyone and their grandmother what you did to me and what you did to other people. And I don't care. I don't care. I would not change that about myself for the world. I would rather be a person that speaks out, albeit angrily and in a disorganized way, about someone who does terrible things and says terrible things, than someone who silently sits back and watches them do it. Spare yourself the terrible experience of me ruining your life, because I will. I come from, a history of abuse. I have a career in education where I work with very, very vulnerable people, and might I add, I must have been the only one who has actually worked with vulnerable people from among the people who are figureheads. There were people who were becoming qualified to become as like a psychotherapist or a counselor, which is laughable. I think that I was the only one with actual background experience working with vulnerable people. As someone who has worked with people who have suffered, I'm not gonna be quiet when I see you messing with them. Like, I'm just not. I don't care about your privacy. Oh my god, they said such bad things about me. How could they say that? Because you did it. I will go out of my way to push you as far away from me as I can and make sure everyone I know knows that you are not someone to fuck with. Don't fuck with me. If you're a bad person, just don't fuck with me. This is my public service announcement. This is also the point of this video. Like, I don't want that energy in my life anymore. Do not bring it to me. Anyway, I am going to be sanitizing a lot of my old content. At the moment, most of it is still available. I haven't privated anything. Most of the videos are unlisted, but I think like if they're in a playlist, you can still see them. But I do want to go back through them and like make sure that everything that I've said can't be like used by people with ill intentions. Don't necessarily know if I'm going to go out of my way to take down like interviews that I've done, because I feel like most of the interviews that I've done are pretty, most of them are about like my own experience and aren't overly controversial, first of all, and second of all, I can't be bothered to interact with all those fucking people again. But yeah, that's what I want the outlook of my channel to be. I want it to be a lot more positive. I want it to be a lot more welcoming, and I want to garner an audience that wants to progress and not just like shitpost about religion all fucking day. Oh my god, that's so boring. It's so fucking boring. Guys, how many times can you make the same joke about Muhammad? How many fucking times? It's so old. Just try a different method, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, thank you for those of you who are watching. I mean, the number doesn't really matter, but the fact that anyone would watch at all is, very warm. Like, it's such a warm feeling to me. So thank you for those of you who have watched this video today. And if you like this video or you want to share this message in any other place, feel free to. I think that would be great for you to do. I want to thank my editor. You know, I feel like having a second pair of eyes on my videos is probably a good idea for me, because I can get quite heated when talking about different topics. That'll be good as well, to have like another person to look through my content and be like, Faye, are you sure about that? Yeah. I also want to just tell people to remember to stay safe and remember that the pandemic is not fucking over, and you should continue to perform good practice. I personally work with a lot of students who have like autoimmune diseases and have disabilities in their families, and like I encourage everyone in my college and everyone in my, you know, in my general periphery to make sure that they're still washing their hands, covering their faces, making sure that they are keeping safe from the virus, because it's still a deadly virus and it's still an ongoing problem. What we want to do is to progress into a kinder, more understanding world. Make sure that you are keeping yourself safe and keeping those of us who are more vulnerable also safe. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I can make more content that's a bit more exciting in future. Yeah, like I said, in a depression, trying to do my best. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will hopefully see you soon. Goodbye.